Cowboy found his neighbor's abandoned mail-order bride freezing in a blizzard and gave her a new life. The wind howled across the frozen plains like a living thing searching for prey. Snow moved in thick waves, covering the land until the horizon disappeared. On the distant frontier colony of Frostfall Ridge, storms were not just weather, they were warnings. Anyone caught outside during a blizzard risked never being seen again. The cowboy guided his mount slowly toward the ranch, leaning forward against the freezing wind. He had lived alone on this remote land for years, far from crowded settlements and louder lives. People in town called him quiet, stubborn, and hard to read. He did not argue with them. Solitude was easier than explaining the past. He finished checking the outer fences and secured the last gate when the storm grew stronger. Snow cut against his face like tiny knives. The sky turned white, swallowing everything. Even the stars disappeared. He was about to head inside when something unusual caught his eye, a faint shape near the old road that ran past his property. At first, he thought it was a broken cargo crate blown off course. But then the shape moved slightly before falling still again. The cowboy hesitated. The storm was dangerous. Stepping away from shelter could mean risking his own life, but he turned anyway. He moved toward the shape carefully, using the beam of a small handheld light. The closer he got, the more he realized it was not debris. It was a person. A young woman lay half-buried in the snow, her body shaking weakly. A damaged transport sled rested nearby, its power core dark and lifeless. Her clothes were thin compared to the heavy gear needed for this planet's winters. Frost clung to her hair and lashes. Without wasting time, he knelt beside her and checked her pulse. Weak but still there, he noticed a small metal band on her wrist. The display flickered faintly through the snow. Letters scrolled across the screen, identification data, transport registration, and something else. Mail-order bride contract. The cowboy frowned slightly. He had heard of those arrangements before. People traveling across star systems to marry strangers, hoping for new beginnings on frontier worlds. Some found happiness. Others did not. The name attached to the contract made him pause. It belonged to his neighbor, a man who had not been seen for weeks. The cowboy did not waste time asking questions the storm would not answer. He lifted the woman carefully into his arms. She felt frighteningly light, like someone who had already begun losing strength. The walk back to the cabin felt longer than usual. Wind pushed against him, snow covering his tracks almost instantly. He kept moving, step by steady step, until the warm lights of the ranch house appeared through the storm. Inside, he laid her near the fire and removed her frozen outer layers carefully to avoid injury. He wrapped her in thick blankets and placed a heated pack beside her hands. The cabin smelled of wood smoke and strong coffee. Outside, the blizzard roared louder, but inside there was quiet. For a long time, she did not wake. He checked her breathing again and again, unsure if she would survive the night. Finally, after hours of silence, her eyes opened slowly. Confusion filled her expression. She looked around, trying to understand where she was. Her voice came out weak and shaking. "Where?" "You're safe," the cowboy said gently. "Storm caught you outside, found you near the road." She blinked slowly, trying to remember. Fear crossed her face, followed by relief when she realized she was warm. "My transport, it stopped," she whispered. I thought I would freeze," he nodded once. "You almost did," she swallowed, then noticed the unfamiliar cabin. "Is this your home?" "Yes." She tried to sit up but winced slightly. He handed her a cup of warm broth. "Drink slowly," he said. "Your body needs heat first." She obeyed quietly. The warmth seemed to bring her back to life little by little. After a moment, she looked at him again. "You didn't have to help me." The cowboy shrugged lightly. "No one deserves to be left in a storm." Silence settled between them, but it was not uncomfortable. Outside, the wind continued to rage, shaking the windows. Eventually, she spoke again. "I was supposed to meet someone, my future husband. The contract said he would be waiting." The cowboy did not respond immediately. "The name on your band," he said finally. "That's my neighbor." Her eyes brightened slightly. "You know him?" "I know of him." His tone made her hesitate. "He hasn't been seen in weeks," he added quietly. The words landed heavily between them. She looked down at her hands, uncertainty growing. Maybe something happened to him." "Maybe," the cowboy said. He did not share the rumors he had heard, debts, arguments, sudden disappearance. Instead, he added more wood to the fire and adjusted the generator controls. The power flickered but held steady. The storm showed no sign of ending soon. You can stay here until the weather clears, he said. No pressure to decide anything tonight. She nodded slowly, exhaustion returning. As sleep pulled her back under, she watched him move around the cabin, quiet and steady like someone used to carrying burdens alone. Outside, snow buried the world deeper. Inside, two strangers sat on opposite sides of a fire, their lives already beginning to change without either fully realizing it. The storm had brought more than danger. It had brought a meeting neither of them expected, and perhaps the beginning of something new. Morning came slowly to the frozen ranch. The storm outside had not ended, but the worst of the wind had passed. Snow covered everything in thick layers, turning the world into quiet white silence. Inside the cabin, warmth filled the air. The fire burned low, and the generator hummed steadily in the background. The cowboy woke early, as he always did. Years of living alone had taught him discipline. Even during storms, work never stopped completely. He checked on the woman first. She was awake, sitting carefully on the edge of the bed, wrapped in blankets. Her color looked better than the night before, though she still moved slowly. "You should rest," he said calmly. "I've rested enough," she replied softly. "I don't want to be a burden." "You're not." The words came naturally, without hesitation. She seemed surprised by that. He handed her a warm cup of tea. She held it with both hands, letting the heat sink into her fingers. Outside, snow tapped gently against the windows. For a while, neither spoke. Silence did not feel uncomfortable. It felt calm. Eventually, she broke it. "My name," she began, then hesitated, as if unsure whether sharing it mattered. "I traveled a long way to come here. I thought I was starting a new life." He nodded slightly. "Frontier worlds promise that." "Yes," she said quietly, "they promise many things." She explained slowly how she had signed a legal marriage contract through a distant colony agency. The process had seemed safe and official. Messages had been exchanged, agreements signed. Everything looked real. But when she arrived at the landing station, no one was there to meet her. She waited for hours, then days. Finally, she decided to follow the coordinates given in the contract, hoping her future husband simply lived far away. That journey had led her straight into the storm. The cowboy listened without interrupting. His expression remained calm, but inside, questions formed. He had never trusted the neighbor listed on her contract. The man had always seemed impatient and secretive. Rumors about debt and strange business deals followed him everywhere. "What will you do now?" the cowboy asked gently. She looked toward the window where endless white stretched across the land. "I don't know," she admitted. He nodded. Not knowing was common on frontier worlds. Later that morning, she insisted on helping around the cabin. At first, he resisted, worried she was still weak, but she moved carefully and showed determination. She cleaned dishes, adjusted small systems, and even repaired a flickering control panel with surprising skill. "You know technology," he observed. "A little," she said with a small smile. "Where I grew up, you learned many things to survive." He noticed how her confidence grew as she worked. Fear slowly faded from her movements. The storm continued outside, trapping them together for another day. Time passed through simple routines, cooking, fixing equipment, sharing small stories. For the cowboy, the ranch felt different, less empty. By evening, she stepped outside briefly, wrapped in heavy coats he had given her. Snow fell gently now, quieter than before. The world felt peaceful. "It's beautiful," she said, looking at the endless white fields. "It is," he replied, "but it doesn't forgive mistakes." She nodded, understanding more than his words alone. When they returned inside, an unexpected sound broke the calm, a soft beep from the communication console. The cowboy frowned. He rarely received messages during storms. He moved toward the device and activated the screen. Encrypted signals appeared, unknown sender. Repeated requests, searching for a missing registered traveler. The woman froze when she saw the display. "That's me," she whispered. The cowboy studied the message carefully. It did not come from local authorities. The format looked corporate, cold, and official. "Someone is looking for you," he said. Her expression changed from curiosity to unease. "I thought maybe no one would notice," she said quietly. "Why would they search?" he asked gently. She hesitated before answering. "I signed more than just a marriage agreement," she admitted. "There were extra clauses. I didn't fully understand them. They said it was standard for frontier relocation." The cowboy felt a growing sense of caution. Frontier contracts often hid complicated terms behind friendly promises. He shut down the console for now. "No need to answer anything tonight," he said. She looked relieved. As darkness fell, they sat near the fire again. Shadows danced across the wooden walls. Outside, the storm finally began to weaken. She watched him quietly for a long moment. "Why do you live out here alone?" she asked softly. He thought about the question before answering. "Peace," he said simply. It was not the full truth, but it was enough. She did not push further. Instead, she shared stories about her home world, warm cities, crowded markets, bright lights. Listening to her voice, the cowboy felt as if another universe had entered his small cabin. For the first time in years, he laughed softly at one of her stories. The sound surprised them both. Later that night, as she prepared to sleep, she paused at the doorway. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You didn't know me, but you still saved me." He nodded once. Anyone would have done the same. But both knew that was not entirely true. Outside, clouds slowly cleared, revealing faint stars above the frozen land. The storm was ending, yet something else had begun. The cowboy sensed that the quiet life he had built might soon change. Messages searching for her meant trouble could follow. Whoever sent them would not give up easily. Inside the cabin, the woman finally slept peacefully, no longer afraid of freezing alone in the snow. And as the fire burned low, the cowboy sat awake, watching the night and wondering what kind of future had just walked into his life. The storm finally passed during the night. Morning sunlight stretched across the frozen land, turning the endless snowfields into shining silver. The world looked calm again, but the cowboy knew calm on this frontier planet never lasted long. He stepped outside early, checking the fences and clearing ice from the water system. The cold air bit against his face, but he welcomed the routine. Work helped him think. Behind him, the cabin door opened slowly. The woman stepped outside carefully, wrapped in thick layers. She paused, breathing in the cold air as if testing whether the world was real again. "It's quiet," she said softly. "For now," the cowboy replied. They stood together in silence, watching the horizon. The storm had erased all tracks, leaving no sign of the night she nearly died. Only memory remained. Back inside, he turned on the communication console again. The encrypted messages were still there, more of them now. The system showed repeated attempts to locate her through registered travel networks. He hesitated before showing her. "They're still searching," he said. She stared at the screen, tension filling her expression. "I thought maybe they would stop," she whispered. "Who are they?" he asked gently. She sat slowly in the chair, gathering courage before answering. "The agency that arranged my relocation," she said. "They said the marriage contract was only part of the process. There were genetic compatibility tests and health scans." The cowboy frowned slightly. "That's normal for frontier colonies," he said. "Yes," she agreed quietly. "But I think there was more." She explained how doctors had taken extra samples during her processing, how the contract included technical language she never fully understood. At the time, she believed it was just standard legal protection. Now she wasn't so sure. Before they could discuss further, a distant sound interrupted them. A low mechanical hum. The cowboy moved quickly to the window. Far across the snowfield, a small vehicle approached, cutting through the white landscape. Visitors were rare on this remote ranch. He felt tension rise. "Stay inside," he said calmly. The vehicle stopped near the outer fence. Its design was sleek and modern, far more advanced than local frontier equipment. Two figures stepped out, dressed in dark uniforms, corporate agents. The cowboy walked outside slowly, keeping his posture calm but alert. "We're searching for a registered traveler," one of the agents said, voice cold and professional. "Our records show her signal stopped in this area." The cowboy remained still. "Storm hit hard," he replied. "Lots of signals lost." The agent's eyes moved past him toward the cabin. "We have reason to believe she is here." Inside, the woman watched through the window, fear returning to her face. The cowboy spoke carefully. "You'll need a legal order before entering private property." The agents exchanged looks. "We are authorized under contract law," the second one said. "Then show it," he answered calmly. The standoff lasted several long seconds. Finally, the agents activated a small holographic display. Lines of legal text appeared, complicated and official. The cowboy read quickly. The contract gave them authority to locate her, but not to force removal without local approval. "You can talk to her," he said slowly, "but she decides whether she leaves." The agents agreed reluctantly. Inside the cabin, tension filled the air as the woman faced them. She stood beside the cowboy, drawing strength from his calm presence. "We're here to bring you back," one agent said. "Your contract is still active." "I was abandoned," she replied quietly. "No one met me." "That is being investigated," the agent said without emotion. She shook her head slightly. "I don't want to go with you." The words felt heavy but clear. The agent's expressions hardened. "You may not understand the importance of your agreement," one said. "You were selected for specific colony programs." "What programs?" she asked. The agent hesitated, then answered carefully. "Genetic adaptation research." The cowboy felt anger rise, though he kept his voice calm. "Sounds like she wasn't told everything." "That information is classified," the agent replied. The woman's fear turned into determination. "I won't go," she said firmly. The agent studied her, then turned to the cowboy. "You are interfering with a corporate process." "I'm protecting someone who asked for help," he said simply. Silence stretched between them. Finally, the agent stepped back. "We will return," one said coldly. "This is not finished." Their vehicle lifted into the sky and disappeared beyond the horizon. Inside the cabin, relief mixed with new worry. "They won't stop," she said quietly. "I know," the cowboy replied. Later that day, they decided to search the abandoned neighbor's ranch for answers. Snow covered the property, making it look forgotten. Inside the old house, dust and broken equipment suggested a hurried departure. In a hidden storage room, they found records, contracts, communications, financial logs, proof that the neighbor had planned to sell her contract to another group for profit. The discovery hurt deeply. "I thought I was starting a family," she whispered. "I was just a transaction." The cowboy placed a steady hand on the table. "Not anymore." She looked at him, strength slowly replacing sadness. That evening, as they returned home, the setting sun painted the sky in soft colors. Despite the danger ahead, something inside her felt clearer. She had been chosen without understanding why. Now she would choose for herself. The cowboy began preparing the ranch, checking defenses, reinforcing communication systems, contacting trusted local allies, not for war, but for protection, because sometimes the frontier demanded courage not just to survive, but to stand beside someone who refused to be controlled. And as night fell again over the frozen land, both knew the next visit would not be peaceful. The past had returned. And it was coming closer. The sky above the frozen frontier turned pale blue as morning arrived. Snow still covered the land, but the air felt different now, quieter, waiting. Inside the ranch house, the cowboy stood near the window, watching the horizon. He had not slept much. The visit from the corporate agents had changed everything. He knew they would return, and next time they might not come alone. Behind him, the woman finished preparing breakfast. Her movements were calmer now, more confident than when she first arrived. She had changed in only a few days. Fear had slowly turned into strength. "You think they'll come back today?" she asked gently. "Yes," he said honestly. "Or soon." She nodded. There was no panic in her eyes anymore, only determination. After eating, they began preparing. The cowboy checked old communication devices and activated secure channels to nearby settlers. Frontier communities depended on each other, and he trusted a few people who believed in fairness more than corporate orders. Meanwhile, she studied the documents they had taken from the abandoned neighbor's ranch. Every page confirmed the truth. She had been treated as a valuable asset instead of a person. At first, the knowledge hurt, but now it gave her something else: clarity. She was no longer confused about what she wanted. By midday, a distant sound echoed across the plains. A ship approached, larger than before. The cowboy stepped outside slowly, coat moving in the cold wind. The ship landed near the same spot as the previous visit. This time, 3 agents stepped forward, along with a local legal officer. They were trying a different approach. Inside, the woman took a deep breath and joined him. The lead agent spoke first. "We are here to resolve this peacefully." "That depends," the cowboy said calmly. The local officer stepped forward, holding a data tablet. "Under frontier law, any individual has the right to refuse relocation if deception or hidden clauses are proven." The woman felt hope rise. She stepped forward. "I was not told about the genetic program. I was not told my contract could be sold. I choose to cancel it." The agents exchanged looks. One of them activated a holographic screen showing complicated legal terms. "You signed willingly," he said. "I signed without full truth," she replied firmly. Silence followed. The local officer reviewed the evidence they had gathered, the hidden records from the neighbor's ranch, the illegal resale agreement, the incomplete disclosures. Finally, he turned to the agents. "The contract is compromised," he said. "Under frontier regulation, enforcement cannot continue." The agents did not look pleased, but they had no legal ground left. After a long moment, the lead agent nodded stiffly. "Very well, the corporation withdraws its claim." The words felt unreal. For the first time since arriving on this world, she felt truly free. The ship lifted into the sky and disappeared, leaving only quiet wind behind. She stood still for a moment, letting the reality settle into her heart. "It's over?" she asked softly. "Yes," the cowboy said. A smile slowly formed on her face, small at first, then stronger. That evening the ranch felt different, lighter. They worked together repairing fences and clearing snow from the barn. The sun dipped low, painting the frozen fields gold and orange. Without the weight of fear, their conversations flowed more naturally. She laughed more easily. He spoke more than usual. At one point she paused, watching him repair a broken gate. "You saved my life," she said. He shook his head slightly. "You saved yourself, I just helped." She stepped closer. "When you found me, I had no choice," she said. "Now I do." He met her gaze, unsure what she would say next. "I don't want to leave," she continued. "Not because I have nowhere else, but because I want to stay." He felt warmth spread through him, unexpected but welcome. "You're free to choose," he said quietly. "I know," she answered with a soft smile. "That's why it matters." Days passed. Snow slowly melted under the returning sun. Together, they planted new crops designed for cold climates and repaired old structures that had been ignored for years. The ranch began to change. It no longer felt like a place of isolation. It felt alive. She brought new ideas, better water systems, upgraded solar panels, small decorations that made the cabin feel like a home instead of a shelter. The cowboy found himself looking forward to each morning. One evening, they sat outside watching the stars. The sky stretched endlessly above them, filled with distant lights. "When I left my old world," she said softly, "I thought I was chasing someone else's dream. Now I think I found my own." He nodded slowly. "Frontier life isn't easy," he warned gently. She smiled. "Neither is running away from who you are." Silence followed, comfortable and warm. For the first time in many years, the cowboy felt something he had almost forgotten. Hope. Spring arrived slowly, bringing new life to the frozen land. Green shoots pushed through the snow. Animals returned. The ranch grew stronger, not just physically, but emotionally. What began as a rescue during a deadly storm had become something deeper, a partnership built on respect and choice. She was no longer a lost traveler. He was no longer alone. And as they stood together watching the sunrise over their shared future, the vast frontier no longer felt empty. It felt full of possibilities. A new life had begun, not forced by contracts or promises written by strangers, but chosen freely by two people who found each other when they needed it most. And on a world shaped by storms, that choice meant everything.